humans have always had some kind of fascination with monsters. One need only look into mythology from cultures all over the world, and then on to classic literature, and we can see all kinds of beasts and creatures appearing. They're often also romanticized. The most popular example of this possibly in Western culture being, of course, vampires. Just look at the popularity of Twilight. But monsters need not necessarily be human in appearance for them to be appealing in this way. There's definitely a lot of discussion to be had on why this may be. Is it the allure of the different? Is it the comfort in otherness that people, particularly from marginalized groups such as queer people, may relate to? There's definitely a lot to unpack, and the history and psychology of monster romance and its appeal could definitely be a discussion video all in itself, but we don't have time for that today. What we are going to be doing is reading some modern monster romances. Hey all, it's Starzy and welcome to a reading vlog, specifically where I will be reading 4 monster romances. These are definitely not everyone's cup of tea, and yet many more people seem to rave about monster romances than some everyday people may expect. Particularly if you've spent any time on BookTok, monster romances and the like seem to be gaining popularity. And I am someone who's always had a fascination with monsters. You can see that in a lot of my art. Monster girls have always been a thing I have drawn a lot. And I did recently read Deceived by Gargoyles, which kind of kicked me off on this monster romance train where I was trying to find more. So that's what we're doing. I have 4 books that I'll be talking about. The first of these is The Dragon's Bride by Katie Robert, which is a brand new release. This is, of course, a dragon romance. We also have Ensnared by Tiffany Roberts, which is a romance with a spider-like creature. We have Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue, which is a demon romance. And we have A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor by Catherine Moon, which has a whole different types of creatures, because we have one woman and a host of men. We have an invisible man, we have a Jekyll and Hyde type situation, we have a stone man, we have a vampire, and we have a sphinx. So quite a mix of things. They're the books I'll be reading, so come along with me on the journey. And if you have any recommendations for other monster romances, feel free to leave those in the comments. So The Dragon's Bride, the setup is that a bunch of women have made various deals for various reasons with this demon, and in exchange they have to give up 7 years of their life, basically. And in these 7 years they have to go to the kingdom where the demon's from, and he ends up kind of trading them off to leaders of various places within this realm. And so the protagonist of this book is given to a dragon, and it doesn't take very long for things to start happening in terms of comes to the decision pretty quickly to sleep with the dragon. So it's one of those very fast-moving romances in that way, and it's fine. What I've read so far is fine. There are definitely some elements I don't love. Like, I don't love that really territorial behavior where if anyone comes near this woman, I'm going to rip their heads off. Don't love that. Also don't love the overuse of the word seed in romances, just in general. But yeah, otherwise it's fine. I'm not loving it, but I'm not hating it. It's fine. It's fine. It's just, they're making a sweet enough connection, and this woman's being cared for the first time in her life, but it's just fine. It's just fine. Ginger snaps. It also has this very clear Beauty and the Beast vibes, including a big library. It is this thing, though, of how romances are especially these types of smutty romances, like it's such a personal genre in terms of what different people like and dislike. So often, there'll be nothing necessarily wrong with something. It's just not all necessarily to my tastes. and what I want out of a romance, or there's just, I don't know, there's just things going on that don't appeal to me. That's just how romance works sometimes, but still a beautiful cover. Here's my basic outfit of the day because I'm going to the hairdressers, and you want to be comfortable if you're gonna have to sit in a chair for hours. So I finished The Dragon's Bride, and removing contraception essentially during doing the deed, I knew it was going to be an element somewhere because it was in the tags at the beginning of the book, but that didn't make me dislike it any less, especially with the way it was approached, because they kept insisting there was like mutual responsibility for it. And no, I'm sorry, no. I mean, she didn't say no, but she also didn't say yes. And even if she had said yes, like in the midst of that kind of sex drunkenness, you can't make a decision like that. So I don't care what the characters themselves were trying to say. I cannot read that as anything but 100% the dragon's responsibility. And I just can't. And especially with, yeah, the way it was handled and just glossed over and like, oh no, it was both of our faults. Oh, I've made a terrible mistake. Like, no, it was on him, not on you. Anyway, yeah. So, especially because that was all kind of wrapped up and happening at the very end of the book, I kind of just dislike this book now because of the way that was handled. Like, it could have been an element that happened, but it could have been dealt with differently in a way that maybe I wouldn't have had such negative feelings overall. I don't know. Yeah, it bothered me. It bothered me. So that's that book. It was fine until that point. If you like territorial males who do questionable crap because they're just too much in a sex craze to think otherwise, guess that's what was going on in this book, but no. Anyways, I'm kind of cold, so I'm probably going to go get in my hoodie now that I'm home and maybe do some more reading. Because I have actually started other books as well. So I might go on to, I think it's called Ensnared now. So I'll be back to talk about that. If you're not too afraid of spiders and spider-like creatures. I just had sex with an alien spider, she breathed. Mind you, this is like right near the end of the book, but I'll get into that soon. I finished a few things yesterday, so let's talk about them. We've already talked about The Dragon's Bride. I also finished off Ensnared, which is really an alien romance. Our female protagonist is a human who's basically crash landed on this planet, and this planet is inhabited by spider-like creatures, spider-like people, and one of them finds her, and so we're largely just following them, kind of bonding and them growing to trust and care for each other. This book's kind of also more like plot heavy than smut heavy, which I actually kind of enjoyed. They don't actually do the deed until like right near the end of the book, and as we're mostly just following them kind of connecting to each other, learning each other's language, all of that kind of stuff. And then there's also this underlying plot of kind of what's happening to the spider people and the fact that the queen of these people wants to mate our male protagonist. I did actually quite enjoy this book. It was kind of sweet, the way it was done overall, I guess. And it's also the start of a trilogy, so this book ended in such a way where it's like, oh, what's gonna happen now? And I probably will pick up the other books. I did enjoy this. It was different because it's a spider creature, but yeah, I mean, if you're not too put off and scared by spiders, it was a sweet enough story, to be honest. It's reminded me a bit of Ice Planet Barbarians in that it has that similar setup of like the crash landing on an alien planet, just not as smut heavy as that book was. Yeah, I'm not someone who's scared of spiders in general, so like if I see a spider on my wall, I will literally say out loud, hello new friend. The other thing I finished off yesterday was Her Soul to Take, which is a demon romance, which was Maddie's recommendation. And this is like, I think in the genre it was tagged as was like thriller romance. Like there are some horrifying moments in this, and it has a nice balance of like a lot of smart, but also these kind of horrifying things happening along with the plot. Because in this book we have a woman who has come back to her hometown, and this town has, you know, has its kind of town legends, I guess. And there's some weird stuff going down, including like a family that's trying to sacrifice people to an old god. And then this family also has had this demon under their control for a very long time. And she is instantly drawn to this demon, he is drawn to her, it is their romance. And I really enjoyed this. It's definitely not like gentle intimacy, so like be warned of that, but it's all like consensual. And this book is also quite brutal in its violence in terms of the plot. There's a lot of like fighting and bad things happening to people. So like if you can't handle people getting like stabbed and ripped apart and like, you know, all that stuff is present. But I really enjoyed this overall. The only thing that annoyed me about this was how stupid the woman was. Like the situation she got herself into and the things she did, like she has zero sense of self-preservation and just she made some stupid ass decisions. But of course, who was sweeping in to save her when she was doing this stupid ass stuff? That's where our demon comes in, but like, so stupid. But yeah, I found the plot interesting. I found their romance fun, as much as, yeah, we could be brutal in both the intimacy and with all the plot stuff happening. But yeah, I really liked this. So of these 3 books I've read so far, I may have had some negative feelings about the first one, but I have enjoyed the other 2. And so I think I'm going to read one more romance, and it is, I want to say it's called The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, I think. And this one has a whole bunch of different types of monsters in it, because we have one woman and a whole bunch of monsters. So that's what we're working with. Okay, we have come to our 4th and final book, A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, which is basically a reverse harem monster situation. And I feel like this book was a little bit much for me. Let me explain. So our plot of this book is we have a woman who is a maid. We're in kind of a historical type setting here. And she is a nymphomaniac. And so here's where things already for me feel a bit off. I guess in that sense of I need some kind of connection to be happening for me to find comfort in it, right? So she's already from the start of the book, she's just kind of sleeping with anyone she can kind of thing, and she has a bit of a reputation for that. Which, nothing inherently wrong with that, just not something that necessarily appeals to me, and at points possibly made me slightly uncomfortable. From there, she does end up being kind of recruited to go work at this manor, which is basically kind of like a brothel, except that they have particular pairings, like a woman is only paired with a certain amount of men, and they're regulars and all of that kind of stuff. But on top of that, the twist here is that all of the men who are patrons of this manor are some kind of monster. So that's our setup. We have our woman and 5 different kinds of monsters that she ends up having relations with. The fact that one of these men from the get-go I really disliked and just was like, I would have been like, you know, leave, I never want to see you again. And he got better, but I still had that initial dislike of him. And it was just, this book was just a lot. Like, I'm no stranger to smutty stories at this point, but this was a lot, because obviously there was like the multiple men situation, and that in itself, that's fine in and of itself. I've read some stuff like that before, though maybe not that many. But on top of that, we had like a theatre, which was basically like live entertainment of that kind, and it was just a lot. It was just a lot. It was a little bit much for me. There's probably also the fact that like all week I've been reading monster romances, so I'm possibly a little bit burnt out on it at this point, and so especially because this was the book that was the most full on, and it was probably the worst one to read last in that respect. If that's what you're looking for, like, go nuts. I didn't love it, and then the other thing that bothered me was that the kind of villain of the story, his main threat at the end was that he was going to SA our protagonist, our main woman. That made me uncomfy, and you know, it kind of, I guess, is meant to make you feel kind of uncomfy. That's the point of including something like that, but I just didn't, that's how I felt. Like, this book was fine, just a bit much for me personally, I felt like, and there were a couple of things I didn't like. I will say though, that all 4 of these books I've read, a couple of them have had like minor errors here and there, but outside of those very small things, like they've all been fairly well written and everything like that. So none of them are like badly written. It's just a couple of them had some things that not necessarily didn't necessarily appeal hugely to me, but 2 of the books I did particularly enjoy. So we didn't have a bad time, and even the ones that I didn't love, I didn't like hate the entire experience. There were still fun moments. There were just some things that made me go a bit, not my fave, you know? Not my fave. Regardless, hopefully you have picked up some recommendations here of things that may interest you, or at the very least, found some kind of entertainment from this. But that is it for this video. They're the 4 books I had to talk about. For someone who has always found it so difficult to talk about smutty books, this was an interesting video for me to try to make. I will say that much. But, you know, I did have some fun along the way, I guess. But yeah, let me know if you're interested in reading any of these books, or let me know any other recommendations you may have. And that'll be it from me today. I'll see you next time. TTFN and starzyrts.